Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Access March webinar. I'm Jenny Cover. I'm the board chair for Access, and this evening I'm delighted to introduce our speakers who are going to tell you about an exciting large-scale research project that offers all of our individuals with X and Y chromosome variations an opportunity to participate. They're going to be discussing NASCAR, which is an acronym that stands for Network for Advancing Sex Chromosome Aneuploidy Research Readiness. This is a 5-year program funded in $8 million by the National Institutes of Health. And it funds pilot studies, it trains researchers, and it conducts powerful research using data from the Galaxy Registry and work done at our multiple clinical and research sites. And that includes the Access Clinic and Research Consortium. The first of our speakers is Dr. Nicole Tartaglia, and she almost needs no introduction with this community. Dr. T, as many of us know her, is a developmental behavioral pediatrician and professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. She directs the Extraordinary Kids Clinic, the first clinic established in the consortium and the model for the 19 that have followed. In addition to providing clinical care, Dr. T has been a major contributor to research into X and Y chromosome variations, and she leads the NASCAR project. Dr. Shanley Davis is a pediatric endocrinologist and a physician scientist at the University of Colorado. She's been involved in research focused on X and Y chromosome variations since 2005. She leads the Galaxy Registry project, which is a longitudinal research initiative aimed at advancing knowledge about individuals with X and Y chromosome variations across the lifespan. Dr. Davis is also project director for the international effort to establish clinical guidelines for Klinefelter syndrome. Dr. Tartaglia will start first. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I am really excited to talk with you about NASCAR today. And what I want to do is give us a little bit of an agenda. We're going to introduce NASCAR and basically what NASCAR means in terms of all the different components of it. And then I am going to turn it over to Dr. Davis, and she's going to talk about the Insights and Galaxy Registries, which are the big major project of NASCAR. And then we will talk about community involvement and how you can be engaged in this project. So breaking it down, as Ginny introduced, NASCAR stands for the Network for Advancing Sex Chromosome Aneuploidy Research Readiness. And what I want to do is just break this down a little bit so that everyone understands all the components and our overall goals. So we're going to start just with sex chromosome aneuploidy and what that means. Many times people describe this group of conditions in many different ways. Sometimes it's sex chromosome aneuploidy, sometimes it's X and Y variations, and then there's many different variations in between of what people call it. But in general, the term aneuploidy is the most correct scientific genetic term, and what it means is an atypical number of chromosomes. And SCA, or sex chromosome aneuploidy, means they're the group of conditions with atypical number of sex chromosomes. So many of you have seen this, the female karyotype and the male karyotype with the different typical XX or XY sex chromosome combinations. And then underneath, you can see all the different variations. So our NASCAR consortium is really aiming to understand all of the different variations and is inclusive of all of them. And we are very enthusiastic about this because it's a nice time to put some research together between Turner syndrome and the other variations, such as Klinefelter syndrome or XYY. And it also allows us to do a lot of really interesting research on dosages of the X and Y chromosomes and include the rarer conditions that often are under researched and underrepresented in our research. And so we really are enthusiastic about being inclusive for all of the sex chromosome aneuploidy conditions. Okay, so that's the SCA. Now we're going to talk about readiness, basically, we originally were going to call it just NASCAR without the readiness, but then we were a little bit worried we'd get in trouble. So we had to add something else to the end. So we are not the NASCAR race team. We are the NASCAR research team. But I am going to talk about what research readiness is, because this was a really important part of the grant and the part of the overall program. So we're going to talk about advancing research readiness. So the idea in general with any kind of research that we approach is that we have whatever problem conditions there may be in the different X and Y variations. So you can see here all the different types of conditions that we may want to do research on: hormonal, fertility or fatigue or other medical problems, and then all sorts of other developmental, learning, or social, emotional, or other conditions, of which there can be various degrees of involvement in all of the X and Y variations. And then the goal is then to get to evidence-based treatments. What kind of medical care is best? What are the best hormones? What should we do for language or learning? And all the different approaches to how we can do research to lead to these differences. And so this is really important, is that, to be able to take all these conditions and then lead to evidence-based treatments, we need to do research. But to do research, we have to have research readiness. And so the idea of having research readiness is being ready to then go down and do clinical trials and develop new treatments. And there's actually a lot of steps and components of this. Obviously, if we're going to be doing these clinical trials, we need to have researchers who are experienced, who know SCA conditions. We have to have research participants who are going to be able to engage in our research. We have to have a lot of background research on the different topics and interventions we want to study. We want to figure out the best tools to measure changes for the research or measure improvements. And we need to do pilot studies before we can move into bigger studies. And so the idea of research readiness is that NASCAR is going to work on all of these different components of building a research infrastructure so that we can do clinical trials and develop new treatments. And then the idea of the network is actually really cool because it involves academic medical centers nationally. I don't know exactly how many. I think there's 26, where we have individuals from all different academic institutions across the country who are specialized and working in sex chromosome aneuploidy conditions. And then we also are aligned with what we call our advocacy group partners. This was a big part of the funding, is that it was required and is really always been very important to us to really collaborate with the community. And so we have many different advocacy groups that we're working with. You can see Access on the top, and then the Turner Syndrome groups, the XXYY Project, Chromodiversity, Living with XXYY, and then the Turner Syndrome Foundation and TSS US. And so these are going to be our partners in this project. And many of you hopefully are part of these organizations. And then the funding and then an additional collaboration comes through the NIH. It's through NCATS, which is the program at the NIH, and they actually have a lot of emphasis on studying rare diseases. And so this network of NASCAR is part of what the NIH calls the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network. And so I will tell you a little bit more about that. Okay, so now we have all the parts, right? Network for Advancing Sex Chromosome Aneuploidy Research Readiness. So now you should understand all of it. And it's just called NASCAR. And that's our logo, which the team in Cincinnati, which manages all our data, helped us to develop. And there we are, NASCAR. We're so excited. Okay, so what is NASCAR? Well, here's the structure. There's actually